evening again. Just a reminder, we record the sessions, we post on YouTube. I saw that Paco subscribed to our page today, so thank you, Paco. And if you haven't, please do so. We are back to the Spirit's book, and as we were discussing here before we started, we are in the last chapter of the Spirit's book, which is Future Joys and Sorrows. And we are on question 970. So I'm going to share the screen here. There you go.
Okay.
So we spoke a little bit about the blessings of the more evolved spirits, and now we are going to talk a little bit about this suffering of inferior spirits. What does it consist of?
Okay.
So,
Ready?
You go, Paco.
Okay. What does the suffering of inferior spirits consist of? The suffering is as varied as the causes by which they are produced and correspond to the inferiority of each spirit, as the joys of higher spirits are proportionate to their superiority. The suffering must be somewhat as follows: envying that superiority that makes other spirits happy and their inability to obtain it, feeling regret, jealousy, rage, and despair in regard to what prevents them from being happy, and being tormented by remorse and indescribable moral anguish. They long for all sorts of joys and are tortured by their inability to satisfy their cravings.
So, the question asks about the less evolved spirits, as we prefer to call them, or inferior spirits. But it's very difficult for us to generalize, because we are all less evolved spirits. We are all inferior spirits. That's why we are on planet Earth, which is a world of trials and atonements. So the suffering is really directly connected to the behavior of the spirit in their previous incarnation. How much they have managed to progress morally and intellectually, their understanding of their imperfections, their shortcomings, and the understanding of the spiritual world. So the spirits here, they tell us that they made a sum of the different aspects that we can find in suffering spirits. So they see the superiority of those the more evolved spirits, and they're happy if they can, and frustrated by their inability to obtain it, they feel angry, sad, and all other emotions that goes with those feelings. They feel regret for missing opportunities on their previous incarnation, despair in regards to what prevents them from being happy. Some of them are not even aware of more evolved spirits. They are just tormented by remorse and moral anguish caused by their actions. The ones that cannot satisfy their cravings, because remember, everything that we crave of material things when we are here incarnated, the fact that we lose our physical body do not free us from those cravings. Actually they get worse, because then we cannot satisfy them more easily as we can during our physical lives. So there are all types of suffering from that inferior spirits or less evolved spirits can go through. But according to their understanding, to their acceptance, to their disposition of repair their errors, they are going to be better situated in a sense. So it's very difficult for us to talk about all of the spirits, because basically it's all of the spirits here, right? Because even those that go to an organized colony like Nosolar, which are the lowest organized columns, type of the lowest organized colonies in this spiritual world, they are still feeling all the connections with the physical world, and they are missing things. You see the story of André Luiz in Nosolar, the first book, how he struggles with a lot of the material difficulties. He misses his family. He wants to help, but he doesn't know how to work. So I was asked a question here. It's if it's their inability or their lack of knowledge to attain higher level of evolution. It's actually it's a little bit of both. It could be their inability because of their moral imperfections, and the lack of knowledge for those that we are going to discuss a little bit later, those that are immersed in their own problems and they don't see anything outside their own problems, so they don't have any knowledge of a higher level of evolution. Some of them don't even believe that there is something better in a sense, okay?
Joe, a
Yes.
question. I wonder if the book intends to make us aware that we're still in the process of evolvement due to the fact that I have regrets, I have felt jealous, I have felt rage, I have felt despair, I have felt remorse, I have felt moral anguish. So in a way, the book is telling me, Paco, you're still in the process. Well, you are still an inferior spirit, or you're still in the process of development. Do I make sense?
Absolutely.
Am I making sense?
Everything that they say here are things that we feel in the physical life, right?
Yes.
When we are here incarnated.
Yes.
But the problem, what they're saying here is, if you carry this with you back to the spiritual world, it's going to be worse.
You are going to continue with those things.
Yes, and you won't have the distractions of the physical life. So everything, it will be those feelings, nothing else. And that's the issue. Yeah.
I understand now. Yeah, I understand.
So what they're telling us here, they're not telling us, but what we can conclude from this is, we felt all of this, but if we can minimize our feelings,
exactly.
and all of these feelings, when we go back to the spiritual world, we will have an easier path.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was talking about. Exactly.
So let's pick up an example, jealousy, right? Which is one thing that we all see here. So let's say you are jealous of a friend that has succeeded in the material life better than you, and you would like, you are jealous of him. And so if you learn to control it here, when you go back to the spiritual world, you are either have overcome or you will have less of it. But if it's something that consumes you here and you cannot get rid of, when you go back to the spiritual world, it will still be there with you. And in the end, what you are jealous, you are angry at him, and you may become an obsessor in a sense, or you can connect to him and to try to harm him in a way to fulfill your jealousy, right? So that's the idea here.
Yes.
Okay.
Go on.
Yes.
Is the influence exercised by spirits over one another always good? It is always good on the part of good spirits, or perverse spirits try to lead astray those whom they believe to be susceptible to be misled from the path of repentance and amendment, and whom they have often led into wrongdoing during early life. So, does death not deliver us from temptation? No, but the action of malevolent spirits is much less powerful over other spirits than over incarnates, because they no longer feel material passions.
Okay, so two things here. First, the question by Kardec, the influence exercised by spirits over one another. They are always good if it comes from the part of good spirits. Again, the characteristic of a more evolved spirit is that they always try to help us and they always try to inspire us. They will never tell us what to do. That's not the characteristic of a more evolved spirit. A more evolved, if a spirit is presenting itself like a more evolved spirit, but is telling you to do this and do that, you can immediately cross it from the list of more evolved spirits. There are spirits like us, because we have this tendency of telling other people what to do, what is right for them. So these are evolved spirits. They will always, their influence will always be good. Now, of course, less evolved spirits, or as they call here, perverse spirits, they will try to lead astray those that they can influence. And why would they do that? It can be for personal reasons. It can be to satisfy their own cravings, like they said in the previous question, or it can be because misery loves company, right? And they don't want to feel alone in their inferiority. They want others to be as inferior as they are. So, Kardec asks if death does not deliver from temptation, and the answer from the spirits here is very interesting, because what they are saying is that now they're calling malevolent spirits, perverse spirits, and we go back to less evolved spirits, is much less powerful over other spirits than over incarnates. And why is that? They say because they no longer feel material passions. So when we are in the spiritual world, doesn't mean that we get rid of the influence of malevolent spirits, because we connect according to our vibrational level. But there, it's easier for us to get rid of them because we are on the same plane of existence. And here, when you have some tendencies and a spirit tries to influence you to act on those tendencies, you are not seeing it. So they are more powerful in that sense, that they can influence us without us knowing. On the other side, in the spiritual world, they can and continue to influence other spirits, but they are on the same level, the same plane. So they can find ways out of these influences if they really, really want to. If they will have the assistance they need. Okay? Questions, comments? So, okay, I have another question that was sent to me in private here. So the path of self-knowledge is self-knowledge and control of your feelings. Agree? Yes, exactly. Self-knowledge is the most important thing that we can achieve in our existence, because with self-knowledge we become aware of our imperfections and we can work on improving ourselves. We're not going to overcome all of them. We're imperfect spirits, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of incarnations. But the first step to to correct something is to be aware that something is wrong, because a lot of people do not even acknowledge that they are
Yes. Yes.
making mistakes. So if you don't acknowledge, how you are going to correct? That's what we talk many times here over on addictions, right? The first step
Yes.
for an addicted person is to recognize the addiction. If they don't recognize the addiction, there's no way you can treat it.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Next one.
Okay. How do malevolent spirits tempt other spirits, since they do not have passions? Passions no longer exist materially. However, they still exist in thought for lower spirits, and the wicked ones keep impure thoughts in their victims by taking them to places where they witness the exercise of those passions and whatever else can excite them. But what is the purpose of these passions, since they no longer have any real object? That is precisely what tortures them. My sirs, I can roll it up. My sirs, see gold that they cannot possess. Depraved individuals see orgies in which they cannot partake. Arrogant people see honors that they envy but cannot share.
So the question basically here is, so why they would tempt us, other spirits in the spiritual world, if we no longer have the material passions, the things that gave us pleasure here in the physical world? And what the spirits are answering us is they don't exist materially, but they exist in thought. Again, if you smoke your whole life, you go back to the spiritual world, and what's the first thing you're going to miss? Cigarettes. So you're going to crave a cigarette on the other side, and you are going to associate with someone that is smoking, so at least you can feel something, because in the end they absorb what we are experiencing here, the smoke of the cigarettes. And that's why, you know, we always joke for those that drink, and you hear a lot of people say, oh, I can drink a whole bottle and not feel anything. Yes, because you are drinking together with at least 3 or 4 more. So you are dividing all the alcohol with others. So, and that's exactly what happens here. The spirits that want to dominate others, they, according to their thoughts, they connect to their victims, and they take their victims to the places where they can exercise those passions. So what happens? Someone that was a smoker, goes back to the spiritual world, is missing. The only thing they can think is of where I can find a cigarette. So a spirit that understands how it works and wants to dominate this spirit that is kind of lost in the spiritual world will take it to a place where they can exercise their passions, and by that way they dominate them. So that's why you have in the lower zones, you have really the gangs of spirits and the head of the gangs that dominate all of them. And how do they dominate them? By fulfilling their passions and exercising control over them through their inferior tendencies. Because in the end, we go to the second part, what they don't have is what tortures them to miss. So in reality, they end up creating those missing physical things. So if you remember the book where André Luiz meets his grandfather that is in the lower zone, that was a very was a miser, as they say here. His grandfather is with a bunch of other old guys, and they are all trying to protect their gold, and what they see is gold coins, and what André Luiz sees is mud. They're really embracing mud as if they were gold coins. So they are creating the gold coins in their minds, and they see gold everywhere, and they want to protect because they think that everyone wants to steal the gold from them. It's a sort of madness that it really happens, right? So you see what, as they say here, arrogant people will go after the honors they can no longer achieve on the physical world, and they feel even worse, seeing people receiving honors sometimes for work that they started and didn't conclude. And of course, the sexual part is always a very complicated one. Every time you have deviations from the norm, you have a lot of spirits surrounding it. And so in this, as they talk about orgies here, but any times that individuals use it for purpose that are not in according to the natural laws, they are going to be surrounded by spirits that want to fulfill their own pleasures. Every relationship that is that follows the natural law is protected, and there is spirits there that guarantee that nobody disturbs us. That's always very important to remind everyone. Okay, Dani, yes.
Is it true what you said, or you said as a joke that when people say they drink and they don't feel they're drunk, they're sharing all this this sense, or I can't remember the name. When you drink, you get not drunk, but there is a different word. Like, I can't get it right now, but I think
vicariously.
No, the feeling of feeling drunk.
Intoxicated.
Intoxicated. Yeah.
Yes, in reality, that's what happens, and actually there are some books of André Luiz that he describes going into bars, and the scenes that he sees at the bars that he describes to us are very scary in a sense. Mm-hmm. And yes, we learn from the spirits that what they do is really, because when you are drinking alcohol, they have the vapors, right? So they are interested in the vapors. That's how they fulfill their desires in the spiritual world. So when someone is drinking, let's say a glass of whiskey, and you have spirits around, the spirits are inhaling the vapors, and so the person who's drinking ends up drinking not the full intake of all the alcohol. Some of the alcohol goes to the spirits, which you can look actually, if you want, in both ways, right? Because if you can control yourself, you're going to get less drunk, because you're not going to really fully drink what you're drinking.
So what about the opposite? Like someone who drinks just a little and gets very intoxicated. It means it's in better company?
No, you know, some people have a weaker physical constitution for some substances. So some people get drunk more easy. But every time you are drinking, you are risking having companies. I'm not saying that you are going to have all the time, but you are risking having companies.
Yeah. Sorry.
But is it
me or Elmo?
Sorry. Finish your question, then I'll ask Elmo.
Yeah, I think I have shared before this story, but I don't remember, and I still don't understand really well. I went to a party in a bar, which already, like, just getting in was a little hard for me because I haven't been in a bar like for many years. And the next day I just had like cranberry juice the whole night. And the next day I felt I was hungover. but really, really like headache, and my mouth was dry. I was nauseous, and I was, what the heck, you know? Did they put something in the cranberry juice that I don't know? But I wasn't feeling comfortable, you know. The description you were saying that Andrea Luiz gave or gives in somewhere in a book, it made sense. It makes sense to me what I was feeling and seeing, and not a good stuff, like not something nice to feel about it, you know.
Yeah, and you add there that you are a medium, so you have an extra sensibility. So you were absorbing all the inferior energies of those around you, and but doesn't mean that you cannot protect yourself from this. You can, but it's a learning process, and it's not very easy. So you know the story, famous story of Chico, that when the night that his friends took him to the house of ladies, and nobody worked that night, right? So he had his energy contaminated in a positive way, the ambient, so nobody could work at the whole night. But the other way around is normally what happens, because we are not Chico and we are not able to defend ourselves. So we end up being harmed by these energies of the ambient. So what can we do? If you cannot overcome them, you cannot protect yourself, don't go. If you can, prepare yourself, right?
But what was it? But was weird. It was the feeling, the physical sensation that I had was as if I had drunk the whole night as well. So that's what I so feeling these lower vibrations physically in my body felt like I was drinking as well.
Yeah.
Right. Or
again, there are vapors there, so you end up absorbing those vapors. Like when you go to a place everybody's smoking, you can feel the effects of even if you don't smoke, you can feel the effects. The smell and the famous secondhand smoking, right? That can even cause cancer. So the alcohol, it's not as strong as smoke, but it has its vapors, and you end up consuming those vapors, like it or not.
But because I'm a medium, or we all do that?
No, we all do that, but you are more sensitive. Yeah, but you are more sensible to that because you are a medium.
Okay.
Elmo.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So as we study in spiritism, we have to be very careful and rule out all of the physical causes of anything before you jump into the spiritual causes. As I said last week, the spiritual cause is always a diagnosis of exclusion. After you exclude everything else, there is no other reason, then you can consider it being a spiritual cause. And when we deal with alcohol resistance, so to say, we produce an enzyme in the liver called alcohol dehydrogenase. People who produce a good amount of this enzyme have a much greater alcohol resistance, will not get easily drunk, so to say. And someone who lacks that enzyme will easily get tipped, usually gets drunk. Amongst most pure Asians, among them, they do not produce that alcohol dehydrogenase. They drink, a half a glass of a beer and they get red, completely red, because there is nothing that breakdowns that alcohol. Another reason, someone who may have that good production of that enzyme, but with prolonged alcohol abuse may damage the liver, and the liver can no longer produce that enzyme. So that's someone that at one point could drink a bottle of whatever, and now cannot drink a glass anymore. So again, we have to rule out all the physical causes, okay, before you jump into the spiritual things there. Very often, as much as understand the association of the alcoholic and the spiritual companions happen more of a perispirit to perispirit association, and with the spirit feel get the feelings of intoxication from the incarnated alcoholic more than from the alcohol directly.
Can you say this last part again? Just the last sentence.
As much as I've understood the association of the alcoholic discarnate and the alcoholic incarnate, of course, if I am going to bars with frequency and consume a great amount of alcohol, I will associate myself with this current spirits who enjoys the same things. Okay, this is not an obsession. This is a relationship that we establish because of having that affinity, basically, right? Now, very often, the spirits will enjoy the alcohol or the alcohol intoxication or the feelings of intoxication through me, through what I am feeling, through my energies, through a very spiritual contact, more than ingesting or breathing the alcohol that is in the air in that environment. And that explains why a more sensitive individual has a greater ability to expand its own perispirit, being a medium, will be more likely to have the sensations of alcohol intoxication, even if they are not drinking, but being in an environment where there is great amount of discarnated spirit carrying those kind of sensations.
Let me share something that probably could help here. Okay, I haven't had a cigarette in 20 years, 8 months, and 25 days. Okay, yeah, okay. I do count my days because I.
And how many hours?
Yeah, not out. Well, I could put the hours, but we do the count in the meetings that I go to, Smokers Anonymous. That's why I have it. Okay, but still, after 20 years. Okay, I see someone smoking, and I still have that every so often sensation. Good. I say that even after 20 years. And the smoke itself, like most of you probably say, I can't stand the smoke. It does not bother me at all. In fact, sometimes I do enjoy it. And that's after 20 years of not smoking. So probably this could help you in terms of that vicarious experience that the spirits might enjoy in hanging out at bars or with smokers. Because even in this life, I myself sometimes, it happened to me, by the way, it happened to me today, coming out of the hardware store. Okay, there was a guy there that lit up, and I looked at him, good, I said that. Now, why am I saying that after 20 years, 6 months and 20-something days? Because I am experiencing vicariously his smoking. I don't know if it helps you understand, because when they talk about this, I kind of understand. I kind of understand that vicarious experience. I just wanted to share that. I hope it helps.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Paco. Thanks, Elmo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. All right.
Go on.
Yes.
What are the greatest sufferings that a bad spirit can endure? It is impossible to describe the mental tortures that serve as an atonement for some crimes, as even those who experience them would find it difficult to give you an idea. However, the most frightful of them all is the belief that the atonement lasts for all eternity. People form a more or less elevated idea about the joys and sorrows of the soul after death, depending on an individual's intelligence. The greater the development of individuals, the more refined will be their idea of them, and the more rational their views of the subject. The less literally will they interpret figurative language. Enlightened reasoning teaches us that the soul is an entirely spiritual being. It teaches us that a spirit is not affected by impressions that act only upon matter, and yet it does not imply that it is exempt from suffering, or that it does not experience discipline as a consequence of its wrongdoing. Thank you. Since communication show us the future state of the soul no longer as a mere theory, but as a reality, the thrust before us all the incidents of life beyond grave. However, they also show us that they are the natural consequences of terrestrial life. They show us that although they are free from the fanciful accessories created by human imagination, they're painful for those who have made bad use of their abilities during this life. The diversity of the consequences is infinite, but we can say, in summary, that each spirit atones for its wrongdoings. Each one is punished where one has sinned. Some are punished by the incessant sight of the evil they have done. Others by regret, fear, shame, doubt, isolation, darkness, separation from the loved ones, and so on.
Okay. So, the question here is, again, it's very generic. What's the greatest suffering that a bad spirit can endure? Each one is different, right? The sufferings that each spirit faces when they are back in the spiritual world, struggling to overcome their challenges is, they are all mental tortures, as they say here, because we don't have a physical body, so everything is in the mind. Those that have no idea of us being eternal spirits, they have this belief that the suffering lasts for eternity. And I think that's where maybe, again, that's me, my conclusion, that's where the notion of hell may have come to us from a spirit's experiencing this suffering in the spiritual world that burned them, and that's the only recollection they bring when they come back from the spiritual world. So for them, they burn in hell for eternity. That's this suffering they are going through. Actually, that next question talks about this a little bit. But, it's what we always say here, and we always try to reinforce, is the importance of the understanding of ourselves as eternal spirits, because that will give us the tools when we are in the spiritual world, going through challenges, through suffering, through pain that we don't know how to resolve. That will give us the tools to know what to do, which is to pray sincerely, to ask for the help of our loved ones, of our spiritual benefactors, to accept that the suffering has an end that is just temporary. So all of this comes from the knowledge of our life as eternal spirits. Of course, it's not always easy to apply those when we are going through difficult times, and we know that here because we all study a lot of spiritism here, and we all go through some challenges in our lives that sometimes we fail to know how to deal with them. They make us suffer a lot, even knowing that everything is temporary. But the knowledge here, as the Kardec says, this is a comment by Kardec, remember. Kardec says the spirit communications show us the future state of the soul as a reality. And even more nowadays that we have so many different books that tells us, the books from André Luiz through Chico Xavier, the books from Manuel Filomeno de Miranda through Divaldo Franco, they all give us a picture of life in the spiritual world and the different types of struggles that spirits will face in the spiritual world according to their own individual stories. So we should be able, we spiritists should be able to get rid of these illusions of eternal suffering, eternal happiness, eternal damnation, and all these things that we bring from the religions that we follow throughout our incarnations, and understand that it's simply cause and consequence. What we are facing is a consequence of what we have done. If we cannot find the reason, we just need to understand that we may not remember, but it is there for a reason, that all the challenges that we are going through are for our improvement and learning, and to atone from previous mistakes that we make. Okay, so it's very important in that sense to understand when we find ourselves back in the spiritual world, to assess and understand our situation, and access the tools that we have acquired throughout all these years learning and studying, to use these tools to help us find a solution for our issues that should be different from those that are suffering and have no idea what to do with their suffering. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? No? We're good? Okay.
Go on.
So, go on.
Okay. From where does the theory of eternal fire originate? An image that has been taken literally, like so many others. Nonetheless, can this fear lead to a useful result? Look around and you see whether there are many who are restrained by it, even among those by whom it is preached. If you teach what contradicts reason, the impressions you make are neither long-lasting nor advantageous. Human language is unable to express the nature of this suffering. Therefore, human beings have been unable to devise a comparison for it, one that is more appropriate than that of fire, because fire is both the most excruciating torture and the symbol of the most energetic action. That's why the belief in eternal fire has existed since the dawn of reason and has passed down by successive generations to the present day. Likewise, that is why all nations speak of fiery passions, burning love, burning with jealousy, and so on.
Okay, so a little bit of what I mentioned before, right? Eternal fire. Really, it's us coming back from the spiritual world, where we spend all the time suffering, struggling, what seem to us like eternal suffering, eternal fire, as they say here, and we took it literally and we created hell. Meaning, those that do not behave themselves, do not follow the natural law, will find themselves in eternal fire. But we know better now, and we know that that's not the case. But many still believe in that. And that is interesting, because then Kardec asks, well, but maybe this fear can lead to a useful result. And the spirits are very direct and say, just look around. Do you think it really works? If you teach what contradicts reason, the impressions you make are neither long-lasting nor advantageous. And you know, we've seen so many scandals, and actually for those that saw the scandal yesterday or the day before about that pastor in, I don't remember exactly where he was, the pastor of the church that was caught in a sexual scandal. And oh no, it was not a pastor, it was the
Liberty University.
Yeah, the dean of the university, yes. That this university preaches all sorts of constraints and all sorts of
foul, yeah.
Yeah, and he was caught with doing exactly what he asked everybody not to do. So again, you read a story like that, what is the result for someone that really has no inclination here or there? You know, you kind of understand that there may be a hell, but on the other hand, you think that, oh no, this is fantasy. So you're not sure, you are there in the middle. And then you see a story like that, you know, you move away from the beliefs of that those that are trying to preach to you give, because, you know, you follow the teachings or you follow the examples. We should follow the examples, right? We should look to a tree by the fruits, right? Every time that I read people talking about Divaldo these days, that he's being criticized by some things there in Brazil, and I look at the result of the work that he does. More than 100,000 people were benefited from his work that has been completed 68 years a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, criticize, first do the same that he did, then you can criticize. But those that do what he did do not have time to criticize others because they are too busy doing their own work. So, you know, it's interesting. Then Kardec comes and says that human language is unable to express the nature of this suffering. Why is human language? Because this suffering happens in the spiritual world, and it's a suffering that we don't have anything similar here on earth that we can use words to explain. So we have to find words, our own words, and the comparison. And the best comparison that we could find was fire, right? Because fire is really one of the most excruciating torture, and actually was used to burn people that were condemned, burn at stake, which was really a very painful punishment. And we created this belief in eternal fire, but it's a belief that really doesn't convince many people. More and more people are do not believe in the concepts of heaven and hell, even if they continue going to church and everything. They believe that in a slightly different version, they create their own versions of heaven and hell, and their own beliefs in heaven and hell. Because in the end, everything that goes against reason, we end up using a little bit of our reason, even if we try not to, or we are told not to. Okay. Questions, comments? Oh. Okay. Next.
Go on. Okay. Do inferior spirits understand the happiness of the virtuous? Yes, and that happiness is the source of torment for them. They understand that their own deeds deprive them of it. It also leads them to seek a new physical existence to shorten that duration of that torment when death frees them from matter, if good use is made of this existence. If it is on this basis that they choose the appropriate trial to atone for their faults. It must be remembered that spirits suffer for all the wrongdoing they have done, or which they have been the voluntary cause, all the good that they might have done and did not do, and all the evil that has resulted from failing to do the good that they might have done. Whenever it is a spirit emerges from the fog and sees the obstacles that stand between it and ultimate happiness. Therefore, it suffers more because it understands the full extent of its culpability. There are no more illusions for it. It sees things as they really are. Whenever a spirit sees all its past lives at a glance and foresees the future promised to it, it understands what it still needs to do to reach that future. It is like a traveler who's rolled up. It is like a traveler. It's like a traveler who, having reached the top of a hill, sees both the road it traveled and what it still has to travel to reach the end of the journey.
Okay, so this last paragraph is a comment by Kardec, okay? And it's important to stress that it was a comment by Kardec because when he says here that spirit sees all its past life at a glance and foresees the future, according to what we read from the books of André Luiz, we really remember our last incarnation. We have glances of our previous incarnations according to our needs, to what we need to work on. And it depends on the spirits also. So let's go back to the beginning. So the question is if inferior spirits understand the happiness of the virtues. Not all of them. What they understand is their own unhappiness. And so that happiness is a source of torment for them. The lack of happiness is a source of torment for them. Many of them know about the more evolved spirits and envy in them in a way. So they would like to overcome their challenges. And that's when the Spirit says that for the spirits that understand their imperfections and want to deal with those, they seek a new incarnation, new physical existence to reduce, to end the suffering that we go through in the spiritual world. And if they know if they make good use of their existence, they will free themselves from their suffering. So they choose the trials to atone for their faults. But what is really, I think is really important here, and that really should scare us, is not that we suffer for the wrongdoing that we have done or that we caused, because we know that, but because of all the good that we might have done and we did not, and even more, all the evil that has resulted from us failing to do good. That's really what should concern all of us, because we are here not only to not make mistakes or not to cause harm. We are here to actively try to do good and prevent evil. And you remember the phrase from Martin Luther King that I read the other day, right? Like 1 month ago, that in the end, what's going to make a difference is not the screams of my enemies, but the silence of my friends. If we are silent as evil is being done around us, we are responsible. Again, we are responsible as much as we are aware of it and as much as we can do something. Okay, that's very important, because if there is nothing we can do, or if we are going to cause harm to ourselves, we have to preserve ourselves first. But if we could have done something and we are not doing it, we are responsible for failing to do the good and the evil that has resulted from it. And when of course, when we go back to the spiritual world, as they said here, we emerge from a fog, meaning we leave the heaviness of the physical body behind. We may be able to see what stands between us and happiness. And then we look at ourselves and we understand the reasons, some of the reasons that do not allow us to achieve that happiness yet. So we are able there in the spiritual world to see things as they really are, and that can be very painful. And it is very painful to a lot of spirits, and we see and talk to every week to spirits that are struggling because of that, because they understand their responsibility, and they find it very hard to find the strength to overcome. They end up trying to find reasons to stay where they are. They keep finding excuses for themselves to continue doing what they are doing there in the spiritual world, because to change is a lot of hard work, and they don't want to. They're afraid to start.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is not much different from any of our situations here, right? On the physical world. You know, change is always complicated.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? We are not going to. Yes, Danny, go ahead, because we're not going to go to the next one.
Yeah, I
2
know,
minutes.
I know we're reaching the time, but I think this question here, to me, it resonates a lot with what's going on in this country right now, all the protests and the events that have been happening. And I think we have been asked to, in some way or another, on Instagram or Facebook or right here, right now, anywhere around us, I think this is being asked from us, like, it's time to put your hands on, like have your hands on somehow, not just stand by and see what happens. Or like you quoted Martin Luther King in that way. And I keep asking this question myself a lot, like it's complicated. It's not that simple. Like, should I go out and march? Should I go out and protest? You know, should I be very verbal on Instagram like a lot of people? You know, it's certain things, it's not at our comfort level, or not my personality or whatever, you know, we are so different. But the pressure is so strong, and reading, you know, this question and your comments on it, it's right there in my face again.
I think that what we have to ask ourselves is, how can I make a difference? Mm-hmm. Knowing my limitations and knowing what I can do, because you know, if going to the street is how you think you can make a difference, then go. But if you are going to the street just because you think that because otherwise you feel guilty for not doing anything, you know, there is always something else that we can do. We all have capabilities and abilities to do things that we can make a difference. And Anna just posted here, and which is very important. At least the least we can do is pray. So that's a start already. We can pray, yes, and prayer always make a difference. But the question really is, how can I be of service? How can I make a difference? We have to ask ourselves this question, and that's the answer is individual. Each person can contribute in a different way, but we can all contribute some way or another according to our beliefs. And again, do no harm. Try to build something. You know, sometimes you enter into these sterile discussions on social media that takes you nowhere. It just you know, it increases the problem instead of solving. So sometimes silence is the best best thing you can do. If there is nothing you can say is going to make any difference, then stay silent, stay away from it, right? If you can help someone that's struggling because of injustice, try to help them. Again, it's personal. We all can make a difference, but we can all pray. Thank you, Anna, for reminding us. And that's very important. Okay? All right. So we're going to stop here. We still have some questions to go on this item, but it's a very interesting item. So we will continue next week more with the suffering spirits a little bit. So this Saturday, we have a lecture by our friend Marcelo Neto, who is the president of the Spiritist Federation of Florida and the vice president of Conscious Living Spiritist group in Miami. And also the president of Leal Publisher that publishes Divaldo's books in English, and of Fab Publisher that publishes the books from André Luiz and Emmanuel, the books that you all buy. So Marcelo is going to talk to us when a little bit goes a long way. That may answer some of the questions things that we just discussed here. So this Saturday at 11 a.m. on the USS Federation web, Facebook and YouTube pages, okay? Also this Sunday, the last Sunday of the month, and also the 5th Sunday of August. So we don't have anything planned for the 5th Sunday. And so we decided to anticipate the Q&A session from the following Sunday. And we're going to have a full session of Q&A with me and Elmo from 11 to 12:30. So bring your questions, anything, ask us anything, and we will answer if we know the answer. If we don't know, we'll say we don't know. We cannot promise that we can answer all the questions, but we can try. So I invite you all to join us on Sunday at 11 a.m. and bring some questions so we can answer. And you can always write the questions on the chat if you don't want to ask directly. Okay? So Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure, thank you. Infinite spirits and supreme intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together today for our studies for the Spirit's book in the topic of future joys and sorrows. We are grateful for the blessings of the spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, our guides, guardian angels, protector spirits who are with us, guiding us and acting as way showers as we do our part. We know that we are eternal spirits. Everything is temporary. Our suffering will have an end. Life in the spiritual world will be very unique for each of us. We have an individual role that we will unravel, and we will be guided to do that when we reach that place. It relates to cause and consequence, and we need to assess the situation using the tools that we have learned through our studies. Each day, every day, we have the chance to begin anew. We have the chance to change and make amends. We need to honestly take stock of ourselves and ask for guidance as we do our part. We can use prayer and mindfulness to do this. It will make the difference. We can all be helpful in some way. Each of us has a unique task in this life, and we can make a difference. As we close this portion of the meeting this evening, we humbly ask to continue with our prayers, with our studies, with our mindfulness and contemplations throughout the week. May we receive the love and light of Christ within, the high road of consciousness, the inner peace that allows us to move forward gracefully in this world. We know that there are many challenges, but there are also many victories that we can celebrate. And we know during this time we are deeply in need to be of service, to be of charity to others, to be more kind, more thoughtful, and ask ourselves what we can do best each day to be helpful. We can do that. We can play a great role in this life. We close now and ask for safety, for guidance, protection, and inner peace as we move forward. May we close now and humbly ask to be beacons of light, receiving the light and love of Christ within. May we go forth now as beacons of light with peace in our hearts. So be it.